Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to do a general revision of how to form questions and negatives. Before we start, as usual, please bring your activity book, your workbook, get a pen or a pencil, get your notebook or papers to write on, and let's start. Natural order in English sentences. You remember, of course, that when we studied the sentence, we said that every sentence in English must have a subject and a verb, and we might also have a complement after the verb, whatever the complement is, an object, an adjective, an adverb, a prepositional phrase, or a mixture of all of that. But what we're interested in now is the order in which these words appear. So in statements, as it says here, we have the natural order. The natural order is observed or is applied. So we have a subject first, and then a verb, and then whatever the complement is. But today we want to talk about questions, and we will start with yes-no questions. Of course, they are called yes-no questions because the answer to these questions is either yes or no. But to make yes-no questions, we must change this natural order, the subject, verb, complement order, into inverted order. Inverted order means we need to switch something. We need to change how the subject and the verb appear in the sentence. But the question is, how? So let's talk about the steps that we have to take in order for us to change a statement into a question. And before we go on, I'm going to get my magic wand first. Okay, so the first step is underline the whole verb. And notice this word, the whole verb. And we mean the whole verb with the main verb and helping verbs, because you need to remember that a verb is made up of the main verb, but also all the helping verbs that come before it. So we might have verb be, verb have, or a model like can, could, will, whatever. All of these helping verbs plus the main verb are called the verb. So let's look at this sentence. She has been studying for 3 hours. If I want to change this sentence into a yes-no question, I have to underline the verb, has been studying. Now, what do I do after that? Notice, she is the subject, has been studying is the verb. Now I have to go and move only the first helping verb and put it before the subject. Where is the first helping verb? I have 2 helping verbs, has and been. So, as it says here, the has is the first helping verb. I need to bring it before the subject. So the question is, has she been studying for 3 hours? Is this correct? No, there's something missing here. This is the third step. I just noticed that my steps are, they all have number 1 because they're all important. Okay, let's say I didn't forget to change the numbers. Okay. So what do we do next? The final step is put a question mark at the end of the sentence. So without a question mark, this is going to be a big problem. All questions must end in a question mark. So the question would finally be written as, has she been studying for 3 hours? We move on. Now, we want to change the following statements into yes/no questions. So let's practice doing this together, and let's see how we can change any statement into a question. Notice, I am going. I is the subject, am going is the verb. If I want to apply the rule, I take the first helping verb, which is am here, and put it before the subject. So the question is, am I going with you tomorrow? Second question, my family could be invited to the wedding. The verb is could be invited. The first helping verb is could. So I have to move could before the subject. Could my family be invited to the wedding? Notice the question mark. Number 3, the children are playing outside. Are playing. Here I have the helping verb are, and I bring it before the subject to make the question, are the children playing outside? Notice all of these are yes/no questions, so I can answer this question by yes, they are, or no, they are not. The books were written in the early years of the 20th century. Were written, were comes before the subject. Were the books written in the early years of the 20th century? Question. I hope that this is clear, and I hope that you practice this more on your own. If you would like to stop the video now and write these down, go ahead. Now, as long as we have helping verbs, there's no problem. But what do we do if the verb is made up of only one word or one part, that is the main verb? What do we do? There are 2 ways to form questions if the sentence has only one word as a verb. The first way is if the main verb is verb be, and be comes in all different forms, am or is or are or was or were. There's a comma here. Am, is, comma, are, comma, was, were. How do we make the question here? We use it, that is verb be, before the subject. Look at the sentence. They are happy. Where's the verb? Are. There's no other verb here. Are is not a helping verb, it's a main verb. What do? I use are before the subject, and the question is, are they happy? Let's look at the second one. I was late. Was is the verb. What do? I use was before the subject. And the question is, was I late? There's another alternative. If the main verb is any verb other than be, that is, plays, wanted, stopped, cuts, ate, has, did, any other verb that is a main verb but doesn't have helping verbs, what do? I use the helping verb do in its different forms, do, does, did, before the subject. Of course, we talked about this before, and I think it's very clear for everyone that when I use the verb do, it takes whatever form or signal or sign that the main verb is carrying. So if the main verb has an S with it, then the do takes the S and it becomes does. If the main verb is in the simple past, so it's carrying the past or it's wearing the form of the simple past, when we use do carries that past and it becomes did. Let's look at the examples here. She has a cold. Has is the verb and it doesn't have any helping verbs. Has is present. It's the simple present of have. So if I want to use do with it, the has changes into have, which is the basic or infinitive form, and it throws the S to the do, and it becomes does. Does she have a cold? There's a mistake here. This should be a question mark. We stayed at home. Stayed is a verb that doesn't have any helping verbs. So again, I have to use do. Do also carries the past. So the question is, did we stay at home? Please, please, please do not repeat the past in the helping verb and in the main verb. I cannot say, did we stayed? I cannot say that because the past moved from the main verb to verb do, and verb do became did. Let's look at the third one. The baby cries all the time. Does the baby cry all the time? The students did their homework. Did the students do their homework? Please pay attention to this sentence. Notice that, let me get my magic wand again. Okay, notice that the main verb here is did. This is not the same do that we use for questions. This is actually a main verb. So I have to use do here before it. But when do comes here, it carries the past as well. So the question ends up being, did the students do? This is the main verb, and this is the helping verb that came to make the question. I hope that this is clear. Moving on. We need to practice a bit. So now you know that in order for us to make questions, we either use the first helping verb before the subject, or if there are no helping verbs, I look at the main verb really carefully and I check. If it's verb to be, then I use it before the subject. If it's not verb to be, then I have to use do, did, or does with it. So you need to stop the video and write down these statements. Then you have to apply the rules that we have just studied. Don't forget to underline the verb first. That's very important. These are the sentences. Sami is talking on the phone. Friends are always there for you. The administration might need additional resources. We had guests over last night. The lady spoke slowly. She does the dishes in the evening. Ahmed had been trying to finish the project. I was sure of the results. They wanted to see the show. My brothers have an exam tomorrow. Write these sentences down and change them into yes, no questions, please. After you finish the exercise, you may continue watching. So I hope that you took the time to answer the question, because this is really good exercise that you need. Let's do the answers together. So Sami is talking on the phone. Sami is the subject. Is talking is the verb. Here it's easy. I have a helping verb, is. Is the helping verb. So I just move the helping verb before Sami and I have the answer. Is Sami talking on the phone? Second sentence, friends are always there. Good girls. Are friends always there for you? The administration might need resources. Might the administration need additional resources? We had guests. Notice that here the verb had is not a helping verb. It is actually a main verb. And I can't use had before the subject. This is the main verb without any helping verbs. So what do I use with it? I use verb do. And the question is, did we have guests over last night? Finally, the lady spoke. Did the lady speak? Moving on. She does the dishes. Again, notice here, this is the verb does as a main verb. This is not a helping verb, guys. So, with the verb does, I need a helping verb do to make the question. The question is, does she do the dishes in the evening? Here in this sentence, I have the verb had been trying. Notice that had here is a helping verb, and it is the first helping verb. So I can actually use this had before the subject, and the question would be, had Ahmed been trying? I was sure of the results. Was is verb to be. Although it doesn't have any helping verbs, I can use it before the subject. So the question is, was I sure? Number 9, they wanted. Again here, no helping verbs, so I need to use the verb do. And the question is, did they want to see the show? Finally, my brothers have an exam. Again here, the verb have is used as a main verb, not a helping verb. So I cannot use this have at the beginning to make a question. I need to use verb do. And the question is, do my brothers have an exam tomorrow? I hope that this point that everybody has revised how to make yes/no questions really well, so we can move on to WH questions. WH questions are questions which start with a word like what, when, where, which, who, why, and how. Unlike yes/no questions, these WH questions ask for information. What kind of information? They might ask us about time, so we use the word when. They might ask about place, and we use were. They ask about reason, and we say why. They might ask about the manner in which we do something, or the amount of something, the number of something. So we might use how. How has many, many uses. We'll talk about it a bit more later. They might ask us also about people or things, or actions actually, lots of things, and we might use who, which, or what for that. I'm going to divide the WH words into 2 groups. So we have the first group, which is where, when, and why. All of these words ask about information that appears after the verb. Usually, it's after the verb in the complement part. So when I want to form questions with WH words, when, where, why, I only have to make a yes/no question and use the WH word before it. Let's look at this. They are working in a shop. How can I form a yes/no question here? I just move the are before they. Are they working in a shop? Now, if I want to ask about in a shop, the place, I take it out from the statement, because now I'm going to change it into a question that has the answer in a shop. So, and I say, where are they working? And the answer is, they are working in a shop. They have been working hard for their exams. I want to ask about for their exams. Why? Why have they been working hard? They arrived at 6. What do I do? How do I make a yes/no question here? They arrived. Did they arrive? And then if I want to ask about the time, I say, when did they arrive? Questions with who, what, which. These are special words because sometimes they ask about parts in the complement after the verb. They might ask about objects or objects of prepositions or whatever that come after the verb. And in this case, they also apply the same rules as when and why and where. So we form a yes/no question, and then we use the WH word. He is seeing Joe. Who is seeing Joe? Who is he seeing? Sorry. I want a computer. What do you want? I'd prefer some tea. Which would you prefer, tea or coffee? But if the who, what, which ask about subjects, then that's another story. If we ask about the subject, the question word takes the place of the subject and there's no inversion. So we don't make a yes/no question. We only keep the sentence as it is and we take out the subject. Let's look at the examples. Barbara gave me the chocolates. If I want to ask about Barbara, I just take Barbara out and say, who gave you the chocolates? Number 2, a funny thing happened. I can ask about thing. What happened? My dog frightened the children. Which dog frightened the children? So again, before I move from here, these are called object questions, and these are called subject questions. Object questions ask about objects or things that are mentioned after the verb. Subject questions ask about the subject, which is mentioned before the verb. If I have an object question, I apply the same rules that apply to yes/no questions, and I add the WH word. If it's a subject question and I'm asking about the subject, I do not invert, I do not add anything to the verb, I just remove the subject and use the WH word instead of it. Now we have some additional notes, and I know you know this, but it's for revision. I want to tell you more about the word what and which. Sometimes we use what and which with a noun. For example, we say, what subjects did you study at school? Which English newspaper started in 1986? What subjects does everyone have to study? Which newspaper do you prefer? Also, there are notes about how. We use how for many different questions. So we can say, how are you? How do you make questions in English? How long have you lived here? How often do you go to the cinema? How much is this dress? How old are you? How many people came to the meeting? So how can be used to ask about lots of things, about amounts, quantities, about how long, about time. How do you make questions? This is asking about the way you make questions. So how is used in so many different contexts. Now we move to the negatives. And how do we make negatives in English? We make negatives by using not or putting not after the first part of the verb. I want to remind you the verb is made up of, or can be made up of, many helping verbs and the main verb. So if I want to make a negative, I have to use not after the first helping verb. This is exactly the same idea that I used for making yes/no questions. In the question, I have to move the first helping verb before the subject. And now, to make negatives, I have to put not with the first helping verb or after the first helping verb. So let's look at the examples. They are not working hard. Originally, it's they are working. If I want to make the negative, I say they are not working. They will not be working. They had not worked. They have not been working. They might not have been working. Of course, in spoken English, and even nowadays we use it in writing, we can use not in the reduced form or the contracted form, sorry. And I can say they aren't, instead of are not, I can say aren't working. Won't instead of will not. Hadn't instead of had not. Haven't instead of have not. And mightn't, although this is a very weird construction, instead of mightn't. But how do we make negatives when there are no helping verbs to put the word not after them? Again, it's exactly the same way we did questions. If the main verb is verb to be, am, is, are, was, were, we use not with that verb to be. Look at the examples. She is happy. She is not happy. Or she isn't happy. The boys were late. Notice the verb were. The boys were not late, and the boys weren't late. How about if the main verb is not verb to be, and if it's any other verb that has come in the sentence without any helping verbs? What do? Again, we use verb do in its forms do, does, did. They helped me. They did not help me. Again, notice that helped is in the simple past. when I use verb do with it, help, or the past helped, throws the past at do, and do becomes did, and help is used in its base form. So they did not help me, and they didn't help me. She does the work. She does not do the work. She doesn't do the work. Again, notice does here. She does the work. Does is a main verb. It's not a helping verb here. I have a dream. Again, the verb have, not as a helping verb, but as a main verb. Again, I use do. I do not have a dream. I don't have a dream. And this is how we make the negatives. I think some of you are wondering, why are we revising or why are we discussing questions and negatives now? I would like you to go to your activity book, page 68. If you remember, on page 68, we discussed narrative tenses. In the second column on that page, after finishing the discussion about past perfect and the uses of the past perfect, we have a few points on how to make the negative with the past perfect and how to make WH questions with the past perfect and how to make subject questions and object questions. And then again, you have how to form questions that ask about how long. And the final part on that page, if you're following with me, is how to form yes/no questions. All of this is why I decided to revise with you how to make questions and negatives, because I don't want you to just know how to make questions and negatives for the past perfect, but I want to make sure that you know how to make questions and negatives for all of the tenses. So, in this presentation, we have covered negatives and all types of questions for all tenses, not just the past perfect. Now, you are experts in making negatives and questions. Hooray! Congratulations, everyone. Now, since you're experts, I need you to go and answer the 5 questions on the following slides. The answer key is on the final slide of this presentation. Please take your time in answering the questions, and don't go to the last slide before you do that. You do the questions yourselves. Enjoy. Asking questions in English. Choose A, B, or C to complete the question. Question number 1. Question says, blank exercise. And the answer is, about 3 times a week. Question 2. The question says, blank, quit your job. And the answer is, I wanted to look for some better career opportunities elsewhere. Question 3. Blank, working on. And the answer is, it looks like they're preparing a presentation. Question 4. Blank, making. It smelled delicious. The answer, her famous chicken soup. You're welcome to join us for dinner later tonight. Finally, question 5. Question, blank, been to. Answer, 4. Mexico, Argentina, Uruguay, and Chile. At this point, of course, you can go back in the video and look at the first slide. Take your time in answering questions 1 and 2. Then move again back to this slide and try to answer questions 3, 4, and 5. And whenever you're ready, you have your answers, you may move on to the following slide. You can check your answers. This is the answer key, BAACB. I hope you got them all right. If you did answer all of them correctly, then you should go and give yourself a treat. Good job. See you soon, inshallah.